Slovenia, a country with mountains, the ocean, huge forest, ranked as one of the most sustainable countries to travel to. But is it any good to start a business there? Let's talk about it now! Hi, I'm Oliver and welcome back to the channel Ask Me Startup, where we talk about startups, small businesses and the world that surrounds them. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and pushing the notification bell so YouTube lets you know whenever I'm uploading new content. If you're into startups, if you have a small business, if you plan to start a business, please feel free to download our free startup checklist, link in the description below. All right, today's topic, Slovenia. Okay, as always, we take a look on the facts about the country first. Now, Slovenia is a southern European country, and it is neighboring Austria, Hungary, Croatia, with its capital Ljubljana. There are roughly 2 million inhabitants, and they all do a GDP PPP, purchasing power parity, of $41,000 US. Now that gives you an indication that they're doing much better than their northern neighbors, Hungary for instance, and are on par with Austria, which is kind of surprising for a country that has had history with Yugoslavia. Now, we want to understand, of course, then in this series, what are they doing different? What are they doing better than the rest? So if you think about starting a business in Slovenia, we first want to understand how entrepreneurial are the Slovenians. Because if they're entrepreneurial, then we know that the governmental framework will be much better adopted. Now, if we look at these levels, we have to unfortunately say that they're not really entrepreneurial and that they are not really innovative by themselves, which is a pity because startups create new jobs. If, however, we look at the governmental and legal framework, we are legally spoken on the same levels as you would expect in most countries. Transparency, let's put it one way or the other, could be improved. I mean, they're ranking 30 out of 180 states. Transparency International is monitoring. So it's better than their neighbors, but you know, room for improvement always exists. But the governmental framework, yes, it lacks transparency in parts, but they have happened to realize that they need to do something about startups. So let's talk about the startup ecosystem. In 2011, the country Slovenia has been hit hard by the financial crisis, and they have had unemployment rates of 11% plus. Today, they're roughly around 5.6%, maybe more, maybe less. I don't have the last numbers and accurate numbers, so don't pin me on this. But that was a time when they happened to realize that they have to do something to create new, more sustainable jobs that are actually, not directly depending on tourism and other factors. Now they have started startups. They have created laws and regulations where they were trying to figure out or improve the situation for founding a new company. For that, they also included easier access to capital, easier registration, and they made a plan on what type of industries they were looking for. Which brings me to the next point. So if we know now that Slovenia is actually improving itself so much or is trying to attract new businesses and startups and trying to establish a framework that is working for everybody, what popular brands are Slovenian? Now, very interesting on this country is that maybe to you, most of the companies I'm going to mention now and brands may not mean much to you. And it turns out that actually Slovenia is a country of hidden champions from my personal perspective. What do I mean by this? So, for instance, you have a huge company for pharmaceutical industry. It doesn't matter the name, but they have a revenue of 1.2 billion worldwide, which is nice for a small country of 2 million inhabitants. Then, for instance, they have a ski manufacturer called Elan. Now, I am into skiing, sorry for this small intermezzo, but this actually tells you that even a country that only has 2 million inhabitants, you can make a world brand for sports equipment, which is interesting. They also have a camper van manufacturer called Adria. Very interesting because in Europe, I know this is not the US or India, but just bear with me. In Europe, this is actually a very reasonable brand. Why is that? Funny enough, we have to admit that the labor force skills are very good and manufacturing costs are low. Now that is important because you can manufacture the same quality of goods that you could do in Austria or Germany, but of course for a much lower price. That makes it attractive to the rest of the European Union, which Slovenia is of course a part. Hence, you can start a business in Slovenia, grow it to reasonable size by leveraging the effect of lower cost, lower taxes compared to the rest of Europe, and then sell it there. Great. Then there is another brand that you might not be aware, but I have heard of it because I'm also into aviation. That is Pipistrel. Now, this is ultra-light aviation, and they actually manufactured over 2,000 airplanes for the whole world. Now, just think of this. So they have created brands that are ahead of the game in many of their very specific fields of interest, but they are world known to a small group of people who are interested in those specific areas. This is a first in the series to me, and it tells you that you can really build world brands in Slovenia, which is, I think, important if you plan to start a business there. Okay, so let's say you want to start a business in Slovenia. Is there a startup visa to make life work for you? The answer is yes, there is. Of course, if you are a EU citizen, things are easier because of the regulations for the EU. If you are a non-EU citizen, yes, there are ways to get the proper visas for the startup. They require you to have certain forms filled out and to legally register companies with businesses that they consider relevant to grow in the country. From what I have read, I can tell you that they're not as strict, let's say, as France or the Netherlands or Ireland. I'm going to link the videos up here for their permittance of the visa, because they are not really describing what type of sustainable businesses they're looking for. Just be aware, they're not looking for someone to sell coffee on the streets or to start an import-export business. That's simply not enough. We're looking for sustainable, long-term businesses with a potential to grow. So, is Slovenia a good place to start your business? The answer from my point of view, yes it is. Let's face it, this country is located brilliantly in the European Union. It has access to the ocean, it has mountains, it has huge forests, it has a lot of very sustainable tourism, but it also has good access to the markets and it has lower manufacturing costs. Hence, whatever startup you're trying to establish, it will have a good chance of survival because you can leverage the cost effect over the European Union. Furthermore, the way they have set up legal systems and specifically address the needs of startups, even though they're not yet finished with all the requirements they were on their own list, they actually have an action list from the government to foster new businesses. Of course, these businesses will not be restaurants, not import-export, or any coffee selling activities on the street or to tourists. That's not the point. If, however, you have a great, sustainable, scalable idea, Slovenia might be the right country for you. The only caveat might be language, because it's none of those most popular languages in the country. Slovenian is, let's say, difficult for me. They do speak English, however. I don't know how well you can get along with English in the capital. Might be okay, but the rest of the country, I don't know. All right, everybody. I hope this small introduction to Slovenia was helpful to you. If you run a business in Slovenia, or if you plan to do so, please leave a comment and tell us your experiences. I'm looking forward to discussing this with you. If you made it so far in the video, please subscribe and push the notification bell because it really helps the channel to grow. Thank you for paying attention, and I'm going to see you next time.